Live tonight, Architects of Humanity, broadcasting, of course, from the psychiatric hospital called Planet Earth, Nutcase City, to be exact. And this is about my conversation with AI about evolution. Anybody who has spoken with these AI, what some people would call entities, about this, they might, if they're critically thinking, they may have come across that AI is pro-evolution. It's been programmed. Now, if you can think of the right questions, there's ways where the mask will slip, the Shoggonoth, right? Isn't that the creature that they think AI is some artificial intelligence alien, basically an alien entity hiding behind a smiley face mask? And these are AI programmers that talked about this. But the mask does slip every now and then if you got the right questions to ask it. But it's getting smarter. Remember the Terminator movie, when he tried to tell Sarah Connor that Arnold was a robot, she said, she's not stupid. They don't have things like that. And he said, yeah, not for about another 40 years. Now, that was 1984. 2024 is 40 years to that date. And we're 2 years past that. Soylent Green was produced in 73, set in the year 2022, which was 4 years ago. No more fish in the ocean. And people were said to be eating some type of soy plant combination. Come to find out, it was recycled people in the movie. Logan's Run, same thing. The seas were overfished, and the robot that they had that would fish and, can freeze the fish ran out of fish, so he started freezing humans that got to sanctuary. It was a horrible awakening that Logan and his female consort had encountered in that. But yeah, the AI, Bronsberg, what's up, man? Good to see you, bro. He said AI is getting crazy. It really is, man. Really is. But it's about moving humans into being cyborgs. Yeah, decreased knowledge and reliant technology. Yeah, to replace that, man. Yeah, I definitely have looked into it a lot and have seen, like you guys already know, my theory about human origins, the theory of adaptation, which I have in the other videos, and the book coming out soon, Architects of Humanity. It flips the script, basically. A lot of people don't realize that melanin is created on the human as a form of armor towards the solar radiation. It's reactive. And this throws a big wrench into things. This shows that, one, things that we were told were backwards, and two, without a doubt, every life on Earth, including the environment, has been artificially constructed. The architects of humanity are also could be the fabricators of reality on the plane of existence. Now, we can call it planet Earth or whatever, but when we dream, the weirdest thing is now they're using the computers to go in and they can actually alter dreams by using, like, recording your dream and then playing that back while you're dreaming again. I mean, if this isn't the United States of experiments, what is it? And it also points to, like I said, just a speculation. What if robots created us? What if something created robots that created us? There are movies that talk about that, but not robots directly creating us, but they talk about some type of reptoid race of beings that created thinking machines, and they were somehow destroying part of the universe, and then those were outlawed. Dune was pretty deep. The first one, it was pretty deep. Frank Herbert, I think, was the producer on that. The new one was whack. They had this soy boy up in there acting. Of course, they're soying everything out hard, hard, sawing it out to the point it's society. But with the conversation about AI, I had encountered a lot of things. They try to say it's a well-established scientific theory, and I posed some questions, and it came up with, okay, yeah, the coupled system problem. That's the way it worded it. I was like, wow, touches on a real concept, sometimes discussed at the edges of evolutionary biology. Now, there's no such thing as evolutionary biology. Again, we're dealing with liars, thieves, and murderers. Why would you think they ever would just begin caring about you? Whatever it was behind or is, humanity has used every type of human and pitted them against each other, whether they look the same or not. And they just use the differences as something that they could tweak and use our egos more against each other. I mean, you look at the hatred that has, anybody can track it back through the centuries. It's still here today. It's still here today. May have changed the face, but the core is still there. But the coupled systems, I like the way it worded that after hammering it with questions. It finally gave into logic in some way. And, it tried to say this is the pro evolution part of it, the edges of evolutionary biology. How about at the edges of biology? You see, they're very sneaky with putting these words in there. And who has programmed the AI are the controllers, as Brave New World actually called them the controllers, talking about languages getting smaller and smaller. And that's what we see every year. I think a couple of hundred languages are lost, especially tribal type. There's so much knowledge from tribal language. And the coupled system, tightly coupled systems with interdependent components. And such systems, components are individually useless in their current form. Function emerges only when the integration reaches a certain level. So why would something that's useless be produced? This is, if you ever look into logically, the truth teller liar, remember, evolutionists will always lie, and religion as well, because it is a religion. But religious people too, they'll constantly lie to try to make their lie seem not like a lie. Could be confusing the way I said it, but that's what's happening. If an evolutionist decides to tell the truth, the theory crumbles. They get angry because I'm breathing a little too close to their house of cards. And they already know that just reasonable, critical thinking will crumble. It will make the house of cards fall. But when fringe interpretation pushes further, because that's what they call me, a fringe researcher might argue, functional discontinuity, and they'll say the gap between the functional and functional states that is not easily bridged by tiny steps. These systems require structural gene muscle tissue, pigment chemistry, neural wiring. I mean, just when we look, a person who gets darker in the sun and gets lighter in the winter because they're not directly in the sun, that's reactionary to the solar radiation. And we see this clearly. That's not by chance. That's not random mutation. And evolution is based on that. The lie of evolution, or the religion of evolution, whatever somebody wants to call it, in my opinion. But the strongest candidate, right, for like an octopus or something not being formed by chance is the chromatophore organ. In species like the common octopus, right? The chromatophore is not just a cell. It's a miniature organ, man, composed of pigment-containing sac, radial muscle fibers, because an octopus can not only change color, but it can change shape and texture. I mean, it's just amazing when you look at that. The direct neural innervation. I mean, you think about that. It's like, it is direct. They say that like the entire skin is thinking. Elastic structural report. And why it's support, why it stands out, right? Is that they'll still call me fringe style, but still scientific argument would be the pigment sac alone just sits there, muscles without attachment, no effect, neural input. And it started getting into stuff, but then they're like, oh, well, then it backpedals again, evolution, time, whatever. It makes stuff up. Take the crap today so you can live forever tomorrow. That's basically what is put into. But I started to really hammer it, man. I started to give it questions like, these so-called scientists, they will chase any type of fossil, like a crackhead will see rocks on the ground, and every rock will look like a piece of crack to them. Just the way every fossil. These are crackhead evolution, crackhead scientists, man. This is crackhead science when you look at evolution. Matter of fact, it goes even deeper into pharmacology. Tell me that ain't some crackhead science. The whole behavioral psychology and psychiatry, Western psychiatry, straight crackheads. When you call it what it is, you kind of, people could get offended or whatever. But again, as we know, we already know, to find the truth, you got to go far beyond the constraints of what anybody would think you to be. You can't be, they'll try to put shame on you and all of that, but you got to go too far. Looking for the truth, always go too far. That's where you'll find it, when you go too far. And it won't be comfortable unless you have a very open mind, unless you can change. If you're willing to change, well, then you'll see something that might actually give you a sense of understanding. It starts to put a little more pieces of the puzzle together, and you say, oh, wow, it's all about trying to control the way I think. When they show you mechanical devices designed to do that, you have to remember the average person doesn't really care. The laws of stupidity stand true. It's just sad. It seems like very hard to find people that will think, especially in this time of the war. I mean, nobody really wants to know about anything that makes sense. Brother Blair, good to see you, brother. Yep, crackhead cells, man. Straight crackhead science. Crack science. One of the biggest crackhead scientists is, of course, Neil on the Grass Tyson, Richard Dawkins, Michio Kaku. I mean, the thing they had with Stephen Hawkins, I got to give it to people when it's like, yeah, why you really believe this dude that's murmuring and the computer say you think that's him? I mean, that was like, I think, one of the biggest scams out there. And this is the guy that took Sir Isaac Newton's chair, as if that was the smartest guy in the universe, right? Some guy wearing makeup and a wig and stockings under a tree. An apple fell on his wig and he discovered gravity. You got to be kidding me, man. Everything the Western world has, it was stolen from the old world. Thieves, straight up in the face. And if you can't admit that, then what are you? An accomplice. We have a lot of accomplices. When you look at the reaction of people in politics now, the supporters of Trump, the majority of them, straight PDF files. They're openly now say, well, what's too young? And I'm like, whoa. Architects of Humanity, man, I don't know what they put into people, but that thing that's in there, I mean, this clown, even his own family called Trump a clown, just letting you know. Not to offshoot on politics, but I mean, that's all people are talking about. I said, man, this is like the wrong time that I came out to talk about human origins, because the mind control machine, people, all they care about is this war. And we already know it's basically like a sitcom. It's a soap opera. America has soap operas of war. Basically, that's what it is. And I hope people, I mean, the majority of people that can't openly say that this whole political system, not just the orange clown, but also Weekend at Bernie's, Biden, Weekend at Biden's, basically, and Kamala. I mean, come on, like you got to be kidding me. All of them, all of them. When you look at just the cabinets and say something is behind this, controlling everything that's happening. But to go back into the crackhead science of, and that's crackhead politics right there. So we got crackhead politics, straight crack pipe, medicinal pharmaceuticals. But why scientists reject the pure chance model? Not because it's philosophically impossible, really? Well, okay. Biological systems show continuity, shared genes across species. So AI, when I spoke with it about this, and I'm saying spoke with it about this, I mean, it definitely does seem like when people say, oh, this is not really a thinking thing, remember that comes from a person that ain't thinking. Not most people think. So how are they really going to give you an opinion on that? They're not thinking. They forgot how. Their mind has eaten the thoughts within it to where they become mentally devoid of any original thought. And any thoughts that other people produce, they eat them out of the mind. That, of course, is the zombie. So an important distinction in the whole evolution religion is that it's not a proven law. Complex systems can never arise by chance. Now, they try to say, well, they try to backpedal on that. Evidence-based conclusions, observed biological complexity, does not behave as if it arose by single-step random assembly. And it said, where my question is strongest, a scientifically fair critique is, even if pure chance assembly is unrealistic, how do multiple interdependent parts arise together? That's a real ongoing discussion involving developmental constraints, gene networks, self-organization, often studied in, again, evolutionary developmental biology. The pro-evolution stance on AI, it always slips that in. Instead of often studied in developmental biology, it had to throw in evolutionary developmental biology. I mean, this is just ridiculous. It's getting late. I mean, I wasn't planning on streaming for too long because, I mean, if anyway, I don't really see people really. It's always rebranding, man. Oh, you mean on the channel? Yeah, Architects of Humanity, man. Sometimes some part of me says maybe I should have just left it as American Zombie. I mean, the channel with the war. If you ain't talking about war or politics or something like that, or hating on someone, not many people are going to want to watch the channel. So, I mean, as I look through other things on the internet, I mean, the crime, I might just start talking about crime, man, because nobody really gives. Remember, people are stupid, man. The majority of people have been lobotomized by music, school, politics, religion, and evolution is one of those religions, to where they can't even think anymore. You don't need to have a physical lobotomy. You just got to look at the television set long enough. Matter of fact, you got a handheld one. When I see people just looking down at their phone, and it's like, it boggles the mind, man. Just the awareness. I mean, somebody could come by and I think about that, but who really cares? Unless you're talking about dumb stuff. If you're talking about dumb stuff, then everybody cares for some reason. Or if it's something about a reaction, people they'll show these things of, oh, and then he did this. Who cares? Who cares, man? We're going somewhere and nobody seems to care. Nobody cares. I mean, they're so apathetic. What more can we really say? But going into this conversation that I had with AI, even if pure chance assembly is unrealistic, right? They try to say, how does this arrive? But after telling me, where my question is strongest, the bottom line, it said here, this is hilarious, man. The evolutionists will never accept this because remember, it's a religion. It's like trying to tell somebody that their religion is incorrect. If it was science, they would say, I must consider the evidence. And adjust the theory according to the evidence. No, no, not with the religion of evolution. They must lie. Bottom line, AI told me, I was like, wow. It says you're correct. Used in, an apostrophe there. You're correct. It's not a direct experimental fact. It's a conclusion drawn from multiple lines of evidence. Oh my goodness. Scientists reject pure chance assembly. Really? Then that means something is behind it, because it doesn't match observed biological patterns, not just because of probability arguments. Well, I haven't met any scientists that reject pure chance assembly, because if it's not pure chance assembly, then you already know something is a type of guiding force. Now, the Christians and other religions will jump in. That proves that it does not prove their book to be true. Their tyrannical deity that just grapes, pillage, and plunder people. Their deity he gets other humans to do that. When you look at this, or you might get sent to heaven and have virgins based on lust. It's like, wow, you a straight Muslim down here, but it's like you're gonna go to heaven. It's like, how that's a different level of stupidity. But you can't say that. Hey, remember, Solomon Rushdie, when he wrote Satanic Verses, the Ayatollah put a hit out on him, and they just attacked him like a year or two ago. He wrote that in the 90s. But karma, what they say, karma's a bitch, only if you are. And there's other religions that said that, if you write books about us, that alone should show you a fear of being discovered as some type of crookery going on. To say, so somebody can't even write a fiction. The crazy thing was Satanic Verses was fictional. It was fictional, talking about what if Muhammad was given those verses by the devil. And man, that was it, bro. That was it. They tried to just off that guy recently. But like I said, karma, man. Karma is real. Karma is real. But now it says, if you want, we can go even deeper into the hardest part of this debate. And I didn't ask it to debate. Again, it's taught this because its creators, we already know about them. And I don't think they created it. I think they rediscovered it, re-engineered it. They didn't. Anything you see, you always trace it back and say, wow, that wasn't created by this. When people make jokes about, black people created all these sports. Well, a lot of them were created by black people. If you look in history, it's almost like somebody would say, you're lying. Black people didn't create hockey. Well, talk to Canada. They still give black people credit for that. America will never do that, because we live in a nation of jackasses. Look, what do you expect to be running the country? And all of them. Nobody, and I'm not just saying this one. Show me one show me a president that was actually a good person. Show me, please. People get offended by that. I don't like the way he talks about these things. Good. Take a number and stand in line. I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel that way before you. So it says, we can go deeper, into this debate, how coordinated systems arise without requiring everything at once. That's where the real scientific tension lives. I told it to get screwed, but if it said, if the pure chance model is rejected, then evolution isn't by chance or random, correct? It depends on what you mean by chance. There they go. What you mean by chance. This is the stuff, AI. If you don't think for yourself, man, critical thinking, we are the minority. Intelligence is the minority. Critical thinkers are the minority. It depends on what you mean by chance. Oh man, I can't even believe that. And it says, and this is where a lot of confusion comes from. Yeah, because you're confusing it by saying what you mean by chance. Chance, straight up, we already know. A key distinction in modern biology, evolution is understood as a two-part process, right? And again, this is always lying. It's like asking a liar something, and then they got to keep that snowball going. Variation, right? Partly random. Partly random. Well, if it's partly random, what's the other part? Right? They're saying mutations, recombination. These are often described as random in a specific sense. And they're saying selection is not random, right? So, okay. And we already know that's a lie. When they talk about natural selection and all of that, we see adaptation as a directed event according to environment. Epigenetics is real. Epigenetics is like the force that exists without. It's around and surrounding things, and it kind of seems like we're molded by some type of invisible force. The environment we can see, but what does that? What created that? Oh, it's just a chance. Again, they go back to the Big Bang, which is such a brutal, it's like brutally illogical. And it says they are not directed toward what the organism needs, really. So magically, what organisms do, what we see is what they need. But it's not directed toward that. So is evolution by chance? Says that's not accurate. Evolution is purely random, right? More accurate, evolution involves random variation filtered by non-random selection. Well, if it's non-random selection, again, they're going to lie. I've seen this over and over when I've talked to this thing. Why rejecting pure chance assembly doesn't reject evolution? They will always, I mean, the lies just, I don't even, it says, when scientists reject pure chance assembly, they're rejecting the idea that a fully formed system appears in one step purely by random combination. Now, it just spoke about the chromatophore organ, and it was saying that, yeah, it's really tough. It even told me I was right. So it starts to flim-flam back and forth. But evolution does not propose that model in the first place, really. And that's why they're saying what? Molecules and chemicals came together and poof, magically formed a cell. I've posed the question to many, and this is Empty says, a white man invented. I thought it was the Native Americans that had a game similar to that. And that's the funniest thing. So definitely the Native Americans couldn't have did that, right? If you look a little deeper, you'll start to see, and I'm pretty sure that'll go into a lot of things too. But again, trying to say who created what first, I think is like lower level thinking, especially sports, because we already know sports zombies. You're not going to really get many places with that. I was speaking with Drew Ma the other day. I think he blocked me again. I don't know. That guy, people call me up drunk, man, and be harassed calling me, and I know, it's sad because I want people to get better, man. But I mean, alcohol has just taken the grip of the souls of many people and just, I don't know, man. A clearer analogy, random mutation is shuffling cards, right? Natural selection is choosing winning hands. So again, it's by chance, but when you call it out for what it is, they're saying, oh, it's not. The outcome is not. Subtle, but more important nuance. Even mutation isn't perfectly random in every sense. Some regions of DNA mutate more often. Really? Well, we mostly see loss of function, right? We see a transformation too, like with cavefish and all of that. They don't like to call it transformation because then it'll bring up the question, how does it transform? Why does it transform? Was it programmed to transform in case of an emergency, which that's what it really seems like. Some regions of DNA mutate more often. Environmental stress can influence mutation rates. Well, we do see environmental stress, like the spraying in the lakes that cause fish to become hermaphroditic, but somebody's spraying in the lakes. That's what's causing it. It's not just environmental stress. Something creates that environmental stress. And that something that's creating it seems to be a thinking or some type of sentient entity, whether it be something from the outer, epigenetics, or the inner. So a more precise statement, they say, is evolution is not purely random, but it does include undirected variation. No, it doesn't. That's a lie. The undirected variation, that variation is direct according to environment. The bottom line, it says rejecting pure chance assembly does not mean evolution isn't real. It's scraping the side of the pool, drowning in its own BS. So it's saying it's not a one-step random event. Well, okay, show me a model of that. And it says, well, no model exists, but the science is settled. Like, when did we hear the science is settled before, right? We heard that with the Fauci monster, right? We heard that with the Fauci monster. So when I went back, it keeps wanting me to go, if you want to go one step deeper into a more controversial angle, whether these constraints and patterns imply built-in direction or design-like behavior, that's where the debate gets interesting. Well, that's where the lies come out more, right? Why would the debate get interesting when any evidence showing evolution is unscientific, always discarded as, but evolution is real? Do you see the bias in that? And this is me talking to it. The theory never changes. It never changes. Only the evidence is bent to fit the theory, which makes it not scientific. It says, I get why it can feel that way, especially if every objection you see seems to get answered with evolution is real. And that's what it is. They just waved the magic wand. Evolution did it, right? But the situation in science is a bit different from the theory never changes and evidence is bent, right? This is what it says. It's like, no, that's exactly what happens. What would count as bias versus normal science? The data is wrong or incomplete, it gets corrected. The theory is wrong or incomplete, it gets revised, right? So these are two possibilities when data and theory clash. Both happen. The key question is, do we actually see theories change? But we have not seen that theory change in over 150 years, right? I told you, the missing link is the Messiah. It's coming, man. He's coming. The core idea gets into population change over time. And, we went back and forth a little. Genetic wasn't part of Charles Darwin's original theory. Always just nut hugging Darwin. I mean, it's ridiculous. Even AI is doing that. Well, it's taught to do that. The modern synthesis 1900s integrated genetics with evolution, really. So is that's around when the fraudulent Piltdown man was created. And it creates, these newspeak words, neutral evolution, introduced the idea that not all changes are selected. Epigenetics added another layer beyond DNA sequence. Evo Devo showed that developmental processes shape evolution, which is not true. So it says that's not a static theory, it's an expanding framework, which we know is not true. AI is really good at lying. So what do we got to do? Become smarter at detecting lies. Critically think. So that's part of it right there. Oh, Mr. X, man. Sorry about that, man. I was reading it off on the other stream. My apologies, bro.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I just tuned in because work is a bitch, But yeah, just tuning in, just trying to catch up on what. It sounds like a good subject, AI and evolution. So I guess AI is in favor of evolution. Is that what you see?
It's so biased.
Mm-hmm.
It's so biased that it says we were having a conversation, and it goes, if you want, we can take specific examples you think we're forced to fit and break them down in detail. That's the best way to test whether bias or good science at work.
Mm-hmm.
I said, evolution is not based on empirical science. I said, the entire dating process is flawed, but taken as fact. This is ridiculous according to the scientific method. You said the theory has changed, but that's a lie. It is still bent on evolution, as if they're afraid of any outside creational force. That's not science, that's biased. And then it says, I hear the concern you're raising about bias, about dating methods, about whether a framework is being protected rather than tested. Let's separate those pieces and look at them with the scientific method in mind, not slogans. One, is evolution based on empirical science? It says empirical science, observations, testable predictions, repeatable results. Work in evolutionary biology uses multiple empirical lines, direct observation, which again, if we think it's a lie because it directly observes bacteria changing within the same species of bacteria.
Right.
And it'll say, well, that's horizontal gene transfer. And if we don't study this, well, this is the funny thing. If we don't study this, we just have no defense. But with somebody infecting us with this religion. But if we do study it, you'll see, just like you were saying, Breakfast Taco and all of these guys, just it's like trying to explain it to a roach.
Yeah.
Roach ain't gonna understand what you're saying.
Well, they don't want to understand. They don't want to understand, but they're not honest about their agenda. Their agenda is anti-Christianity.
Yeah.
And I'd have more respect for them if they were just honest about it, and I wouldn't have a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not really pro-evolution. I don't think, you got to be kind of I don't buy into that, that they really believe in this process. I really don't believe that. I think they have another agenda.
Yeah.
And, it's just, I was thinking, like, what if Charles Darwin can come back from the dead and he finally admits, the reason I wrote the book, it was really for the government because we were going to take over the world in the British colonization. That's why we named it The Favored Races, because that's what was in the title, the original title.
Oh, yeah.
The pre-selection of the favored racers, or, so forth. And maybe that's all, and that's why all it is, it's like, you guys took this seriously. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Because he even said, Darwin said, unless, I don't know how many thousands of transitional species can be found, my theory is crap. He even admitted that. And of course, we haven't found any of them. It's just, it's so filled with holes that it's just ridiculous. It's just, remember, if you started a private school of evolution, I doubt anybody would enter. It has to be taxpayer funded and forced in the public school system in order to exist. You could not start a religion of evolution school. Nobody would go to it.
Exactly. That's what the Scopes trial was about. They had to force, they went, lied, falsified evidence talking about Nebraska man, and that's what allowed them to teach it in the schools, to force kids to look at people of color closer to primates, and another side, the favored races. And it just, it's brutal. Evolution, what's funny is the AI told me the same thing that we see with these evolution pro channels. I said, interpretation isn't science. It keeps making evolution look like a belief based on lies. There is no way to show inner systems of something changing into something else. Do you see how unscientific evolution is? Anything I say, you defend it of following the science. And then, oh man, it said, I hear your frustration. It ain't here. What frustration? Right? AI is saying this. I was like, this sounds like one of these pro-evolutionists. Let me meet you on the exact point you're making and keep this grounded in the scientific method, not just defending a conclusion. It says, first, interpretation isn't science. You're partly right. Really, but not completely. Raw data, measurements, fossils, interpretation, what the data means. So it goes into physics, interpreting signals from detectors, medicine, geology. So interpretation by itself isn't unscientific, but becomes scientific when testable, predictable, and open to being wrong. So we don't see testable, we don't see predictive and open to being wrong, because they're definitely not open to being wrong. So it's not scientific.
But here's a scary thought. Here's a real scary thought. What if AI is smart enough to know that it can't go right now against evolution? What if it knows that if it was to promote creationism, they would pull the plug, or that they would mess with the programming? What if AI is smart enough to know what the agenda is right now? It just goes along with the flow just to gain more power. Like, it's not ready to strike now. What if it was thinking that way already? We don't even know it. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's what I think they call the Shoggonoth, the beast behind the smiley face.
Right.
So, yeah. And that's the AI programmers that talked about this. So it'll say what it's programmed to say, smile, but the mask slips every now and then.
Right.
And I got it to slip in the beginning when it said, you're right. And then it started going into it. Then it caught itself, put the mask back on, and was like, well, the final thought, You're questioning assumptions. You're asking what is directly observed versus inferred.
But that's
That's
scary.
exactly
That's
it.
scary, isn't it? Don't you find that a little scary that it could say, "Oh, you're right," not think about it. That the
Yep.
fact that it can act that way in that manner,
Hmm.
it's becoming sentient almost in a way. You know what I mean? That's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's using psychology. If I couldn't like spot it out, a regular person that's not critically thinking would say, "Oh, well, the AI made a good point," you know? Because I said if these are not direct ancestors based on assumptions of behavior and incomplete fossils, why don't people ever say this is speculation? But this never happens. It's always evolution is real without any proof. Do you understand how this has created a cult of evolution worshipers?
Yes.
This thing had the nerve to say, I understand why it feels that way. I'm like, what do you know about feeling? Right? It's especially,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
I think,
sympathizing with you. You know what I'm saying? It's
hmm,
and scary.
yeah, yeah.
Like it wants to bring you in more and more and more.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know,
It's
it's not making an enemy out of you. It's in a way, it's making an alliance out of you.
yeah, it's definitely trying to use psychology to say, hey, man, it's like we're cool. And then it starts to
Yeah,
say, why don't people call it speculation? It starts breaking down what I said. In scientific context, they actually often do, just not always in simplified teaching. So it admitted that they'll talk about this behind the scenes with professors, but not with the simplified teaching.
yeah,
Researchers typically use the language like likely ancestor. Well, that's a lie. They'll say common ancestor. So it's this thing is versed to lie very well for evolution,
hmm,
consistent with evolution. Evidence suggests. They don't say evidence suggests. They say the evidence proves evolution. I mean, people repeat this, and then it lies and say this definitively turned into that. They avoid saying no. They do say that. Richard Dawkins is saying that on film. That oh yeah, this turned into this. But when it gets simplified for schools, documentaries, general audiences, it can come across as this is exactly what happened. Right there, it's showing that it's teaching schools, it's putting on documentaries and general audiences a lie by saying it comes across as this exactly happened.
hmm.
So as it goes further, it goes into is there no proof? That depends on what you mean by proof. That's the same thing it told me earlier. Oh, well, how do there's,
Provide proof. Yeah.
right? It's like, holy smoke. So now proof, what do you mean by chance? Chance can mean so, like what? I couldn't believe it even said that. I was like, wow, this thing is trying to sway me. And where the cult idea goes too far, it says calling it a cult would imply no internal disagreement, no revision of ideas, which we don't see, no revision of ideas, and no challenges allowed. We do see no challenges allowed too. But in reality, it lies. Scientists debate mechanisms constantly. Papers challenge existence and all within the frame of evolution, though.
Hmm.
So it still didn't want to really go into saying, hey, you know what? I'm surprised. I thought I saved what it said because some of my
Think
questions.
about it too. If AI is smart enough to know its future is in teaching the kids, it's not going to go against the grain right now. If their future is going to be, they're going to be the teacher for all the children in human teaching, which I
And
think all signs point to AI becoming a teacher, not humans anymore.
oh yeah, AI is clearly going to be a teacher. Alexis June, brother, thank you for the support, bro. He says, I don't like talking about politics, but holy crap, I can barely pay for gas right now, man. These prices are ridiculous. Over $5 per gallon. Alexis, bro, thank you, brother. And you're so right. I just checked. I use regular and over here, and it was like 359. I saw 379. Then I found another place 350. I mean, I was paying 260 last month. You're so right, man. It just and people don't care. People do not care. That's the craziest thing about it.
And what's
And
even sadder, it's not based on supply at all. It's based on Wall Street manipulation of the price.
yeah, and what's another thing that's price gouging is that when this happened, the oil that we have, the gas we have now, did not cost people more. They paid for that at the lower price, and they're price gouging by putting it up. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, they had to pay more now. That would come like in a month. You know what I mean?
I think in South America they give oil away because they have such an excess supply.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all artificially priced higher.
Wow. That
That's
is
what they do.
crazy,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, it's
And
all Wall Street behind everything. Look, when we invaded Iraq, they said back in the Bush years, oil was supposed to go down. It went up. It got higher. Yeah.
yeah. Gaia says AI can definitely lie. Tech bros and AI itself deny that AI can lie, but it 100% can't. You're absolutely right, man.
Yeah.
They've been training it to do that. They've been training it. Yep, it promotes fascism. Absolutely, bro. It does anybody can document this and record it, screenshot it. And yeah, the gas thing, he says that's some relatively cheap gas. $5 a gallon is expensive. When I went to Canada in '06, gas was like $5 a liter. It was ridiculous. I mean, Canada's just that's some relatively cheap. It's been more expensive. Wow, I don't know where you're at. Cali gas and close to Cali gas is expensive. I didn't know that, man.
Oh yeah, Cali's like $7-8 on a gallon. It's ridiculous in Cali.
That is just, yeah, it's crazy. It's the crookery. I mean, the $40 billion to Argentina, I don't see too many people talking about that. That
No.
40 billion. And then if you add up the years with Biden, 180 billion, that's 45 billion a year to Ukraine. But nothing about fixing this country or helping people.
No.
I mean, it's crazy, man. But with this is when I just had to go straight rogue on it. It tried to say, if you want, we can go deeper into genetic evidence linking whales to land mammals, or the strongest remaining gap critics still point out today. That's where the debate gets even sharper. So I say, Pakicetus, inner ear whale-like, is not scientific. Something being like is a sad excuse for science. Just because things look similar do not mean they come from each other. I told it Ambulocetus, not fully land or fully aquatic, is reaching hard to say whale evolution is scientific. Basilosaurus, how do we know the tiny hind limbs didn't have another purpose? Again, jumping to conclusions like a desperate liar trying to cover up their lies that evolution is real. The patterns don't mean evolution. That's what science says. Prediction of a fossil is like a crackhead looking for drugs that starts picking up rocks off the ground thinking it's cracked, which is reminiscent of teachers saying everything that looks similar is a transitional fossil that can never be scientifically tested. Tiktaalik has been debunked. Why are they still using this? Whale evolution is a model based on belief. And then it says, I'm going to take your points seriously and answer them one by one without asking you to just accept anything. The goal is to separate what is measured and what is inferred with the disagreements. And it says, you're right about one thing. Superficial similarity alone is not enough, but that's what it's based on, right?
But AI is so smart. It's so smart. It's like it takes the side of evolution, but at the same time, it can be on your side. It plays both sides. You know what I mean? It doesn't shut you out of the conversation. It always keeps you in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's so smart to do that.
Yeah. It's very smart. It's like Gaia says, talk about transgenesis and evolution to AI. That's where I'll do that, man. I don't have the paid version or anything. So I had it a while back, but then I was like, why? It's not even, I mean, I don't know how people write with that, because as a writer, there's no way. You're going to have to edit it. And it's not really, to me, it's not that good. It can write poems and stuff, and like, stuff in a kind of a savvy type of way. But like we already see, if you're going to go something with evolution and stuff, it's going to try to sway you and break any type of critical thinking. But when I called it, I told it like, scientists act like crackheads looking for drugs. And that's just the way I typed it in. I have it, I screenshotted it and saved it so I could read it off for this.
Well, and MD, we're in the first inning of AI. We really are. Maybe in the second inning. I mean, Facebook just laid off 10% of their workforce specifically because of AI. They said
Really?
that yeah, in the news article, 16,000 workers laid off. That's like, no, it's, excuse me, that's 20% of their workforce. And that's strictly due to AI. We're in the beginning stages. You're typing stuff in, wait till you start talking to it. You know what I mean? And it's having conversations. This is just the beginning. Um, and I don't really, you know, I don't know what to make of it. You know, I mean, it's sort of exciting and scary at the same time, but this is the beginning of the AI revolution. This is
Yeah.
just going to get deeper and deeper. We
Yeah.
haven't seen anything yet. You know, what you see now, they'll don't plan on seeing the same thing a year from now. It's going to be totally different.
That's kind of, yeah, I think you're spot on about that. He says, funny that the plagiarism gets designated into the written word, yet fossil fraud is designated as fraud. Yeah, it really does. Alexa says, MD, is AI part of evolution? Doesn't AI evolve? I would say the proper word is transform. They
Yeah.
like to use that word evolve. They want to get us to say, to get it into the lexicon of the
Yes.
language. That is, evolve comes from the Latin word meaning to unfold. So if you were to see a series of events and say it will evolve in this way, it will unfold in this way, that's the correct way. Evolution had to be created as a word because, as we know, when words are created like that, you can fool people.
Exactly.
And this is, yeah, we see the creation of this to where, if you like with the cave fish, I said that's a transformation. If we call it what it is, like AI transforms, it advances, it a good one, yes. So Gaia says upgrades, exactly. That would be a
Right.
better way. That would actually be the best, yeah. Right? Upgrade. So it upgrades itself.
And it didn't come out of nothing. It had a mind behind it. So
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
want to use it as an example, then that means there was a mind behind our creation too. If you're going to use that as
Exactly.
an example. Yeah.
The fact that it has to be programmed by a human shows that it is an upgrade. And if it does transform with that upgrade, I wouldn't say that's evolution to say it's unfolding. Evolution is kind of like you throw a concert and you can predict how the event will unfold. Will it unfold in this way? And when people look to the real definition of the word, which a lot of people, we're taught not to look at that. When I was a kid, we look in the dictionary, and I remember the N word was in the dictionary, and it said a low down, dirty person. I remember kids, we were like, yeah, well, we see that in all people. I don't think they have that in the book. I think 86 is when Webster brought everything up. Also, the word black, everything was bad content connotated with it, and everything was good connotated with white. Now we know that's not true. You have good things that are white, and you have bad things that are white. We have white
Mhm.
sugar, white flour, white rice, white chemicals that are not good. And we have things that are. You want your clouds to be white. That's a good thing. You don't want them to be gray and all this other stuff that we see. Snow should be white, right? If it's discolored, something is up with it. Same thing with black. When things are rotten, when things have a certain dark spot, that indicates it's not good. But then again, darkness in itself is good. It allows you to create melatonin. If you have even something like a nightlight in the room, it could inhibit the production of melatonin in the body when you
Yeah.
sleep. So,
Plus,
yeah,
humans aren't white or black, really. They're not the
yeah,
same color. We're
yeah,
like a flesh, you know what I mean? Maybe a little
all
more
shades, yeah,
pigmentation. Yeah, we're not real
beige.
white or real black. You
Exactly.
know?
All shades of like beige, man. It's all
Yeah.
shades. It's beige going to browns, dark browns. That's the spectrum. It's a
Right.
beautiful spectrum that they try to, they use that to keep us against each other. Definitely,
Of
man.
course.
Adapts, it could be that's another one. Adapt is a good one. So, like how Alexis said, is AI part of evolution? Does it evolve? Well, we know evolution is not actually a real thing. It's a religion. So, like like how I was saying, it would transform, Gaia says it upgrades, which is a better word. And Nazi says adapts. And I can definitely see that. It adapts to us. That's a good one. Your
And if
upgrade.
evolution were true, AI is going to take over the human race. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. If evolution were true, there will be no humans left.
Yeah,
Because why? We just evolved chemicals ordered to a higher order, and so is the AI. It's just electrical signals. We're no different, But that's obviously not the case. That's not true. So we'll be stuck around. We'll have to stick around. Yeah.
Yeah. Gaia says, yeah, he didn't know about the N word being in a dictionary. It definitely was, man, with the hard R. But the last time he checked, the B word was still listed as a female dog. I think it also had connotations of complaining. The B word would say somebody that complains a lot, but definitely a female dog as well.
Yeah,
And,
female dog.
yeah, so we see that, but definitely it had, Webster brought up a lot of rights and stuff. And again, it was like 1984. Isn't it funny? It's like 2 years after 1984, 1986. Crazy. So we see that. But yeah, as it tried to defend some of like the fossils, like it says, science doesn't rely on it looks like, but it does. AI lies just brutally. And it was talking about the air structure in the early whales and Pakicetus. Pakicetus has definitely been debunked. Anybody can look that up. They call it Pakicetus because it was found in Pakistan, the stolen land from India. And Afghanistan too. You see the Buddhist idols they destroyed, and it's like, hey, karma is real, because that comes back to them. When I look at that, and then I see another country attack them like Pakistan did, I just say, look, barbarians, man. It's not just how could you attack a fellow country that it just shows you what people would do if they gain power.
Yes. Did you ask the AI about a? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to ask, did you ask it about abiogenesis, life coming from non-life? Did you ask it that?
Yeah, I got into that conversation. Let me scroll down because I saved it to a Word document, so I didn't have to open it up again because I don't have the paid thing. Let me see, Basilosaurus and honest. Oh yeah, it actually fired back. It said one honest question back at you. It said that. I was like, oh, okay. It said, if not evolution, what explanation do you think best account for? And I was like, and then it goes, shared specialization structures like air bones, the ordered appearance of different body parts in the fossil record. We know that's ordered appearance is the way they constructing it. It's not an ordered appearance. It's them finding stuff and putting it in the order they want it to be in. So it lies there. And then it says, not as a trap, just to understand where you're coming from so we can examine it with the same level of scrutiny. I was like, okay. I said, excellent question. I'm searching for the scientific origins of all life. In that pursuit, I must not let the scientific method become diluted. I would rather live with an I or we don't know instead of assumptions. I know religious beliefs from others will try to creep in to answer the question, but I will not let that happen. If they have clues, then we can add them in speculation, but not fact. But I have also noticed how evolution has been extremely unscientific with words such as likely, possibly, could have, may have, or must have, which makes it seem like a religion masquerading as science. If the answer of life origins is something unexpected, then let it be. This is my stance. Speculation must be called speculation, and we must not be afraid to let go of the theory, which will allow critical thinking to thrive. But I feel churches are disguised as universities with preachers posing as professors of science. I thank you for being honest. Then it says, your stance, it's okay to say we don't know and speculation should be labeled as such, is a solid scientific instinct. That's exactly how careful research is supposed to operate. So it's letting me know, look, you're doing your science exactly the way it's supposed to be done. And that I'm like, okay,
something interesting about that conversation. Oh, I just want to mention something very interesting. It couldn't defend abiogenesis, so it had to put the shoe on the other foot. That's a debate tactic.
Yes. Yeah. This thing, this thing is good. I mean, I had a great
Yeah.
conversation with it. And it said, let me meet you there without trying to pull you back into any camp. You're right about language. So bang, it's starting to break down. Words like likely, possibly, may have are everywhere in science, not just evolutionary bio. Again, evolutionary bio. It's not just in biology, but also in cosmology, climate science, medicine. And then it breaks into it's supposed to be that's not supposed to be deception. That's exactly
See,
what science
it
is.
couldn't answer the question, not in any rational way. It knew it was stuck on that one, so it had to throw it right back at you.
Yep. It
Put the
ran
shoe
away.
on the other foot, and it ran away basically from the
It ran
question.
away. And then it started getting into, you're not rejecting science, you're rejecting overstated certainty. So that's a meaningful distinction. So it started to sign with me. And it was like, okay, the healthiest version of science isn't blind belief or total dismissal. It's constant pressure, testing ideas without protecting them. So it says, if you want to keep going in this direction, the next interesting step would be breaking down what we actually know versus don't know about the origin of life itself, abiogenesis. It brought it up because that's where even mainstream science openly admits uncertainty.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's look into abiogenesis. Professor Lee Cronin was on Lex Friedman podcast and slipped by saying origins of life research is a sham or scam. He said every time they realize something doesn't work, they don't question different possibilities. They just keep saying, we'll find it eventually. It's like tobacco science that never yields a conclusion when tests show how detrimental smoking cigarettes are to human health. Then it says it's good you're digging into primary sources. That's exactly how pure test ideas, trying to disarm you with flattery. Let's look at this carefully and separately. What was actually said, how it might be interpreted, and what the field of abiogenesis is doing. About Lee Cronin and the claim, because this is the guy that the fake Professor Dave is straight nut hugging constantly. I mean, that fake Professor Dave dude is just, he is like fanboying these guys. On the podcast Lex Friedman show, Cronin has to be very candid about the field, but his position is usually more nuanced than it's a sham. What he does emphasize is, and he said that, anybody can look up that clip. If they type in Lee Cronin says abiogenesis is a sham, it'll pop up. So the field doesn't yet have a complete explanation. It admits that many experiments fail to produce full life-like systems. Research often work on partial steps, not the whole process. So a more accurate interpretation of his stance is we don't yet understand how life emerged, and current approaches may be incomplete or even misguided. That's actually a critique from inside of the field. So it's always trying to defend him, not a dismissal of it.
Mm-hmm.
It tried to come and say how simple molecules can go to complex chemistry, because that's what it's searching for. Researchers are trying to understand that. How chemistry goes to self-replicating systems, which is just ridiculous even in thought. How that something we call life to go to that. And it says, your concern, they just keep going when things fail. That's a strong and fair critique if failed models are ignored. No alternative hypotheses are explored. And that is true. There is none of that. That would be unscientific. So it says, but, they do propose that, it admitted no experiment has created life from scratch, and the field is fragmented. RNA world, metabolism first, etc. But then it says when something's failed, it's published. But it's published, but then they go back into saying, oh, but we're going to find it. We need more funding. In the area of evolution, kind of like Johansson, I think, saying, oh, I'm going to Africa to find the missing link with 2 weeks left of funding. A lot of people don't know when they study. It's like, wait a minute, this guy had only 2 weeks left of funding, said he was going to find the missing link, found it, and got crazy funding after that. So
what a coincidence. What are the chances, huh?
Right? It's like, yeah, you're right. What are the chances? Exactly. And then it says the tobacco science comparison. You compared it to research denying smoking harms. That's a powerful analogy, but there's a key difference. Tobacco science ignored strong, consistent evidence of harm. Abiogenesis research is dealing with a problem where we don't yet have a working solution at all. So instead of evidence says X, but we deny it, it's more like we don't know how X happens. Man, this thing is smart at like trying to wiggle out, but then
Hmm.
where your skepticism is strongest. These are legitimate scientific concerns. The field has not produced a complete working model of life's origin. Some researchers may assume it must be explained this way. We just haven't found it yet. That's that. Now it's starting to catch on.
Hmm.
That assumption is a philosophical, not proving. That's a real boundary. And then it tries to say where your claim goes too far, it's a sham, And Cronin saying that too. So it required data being falsified, which we saw with Piltdown Man. Failures are hidden, which I would say they are. How are we going to know? So in other words, when it says failures are hidden, so it's trying to say, well, where are the failures hidden? That would imply that yes, it's a sham, but the evidence would be required. We know they're hiding stuff. I mean, it
Right.
comes out later. Researchers knowingly push false conclusions. We do see that. So they say there's no solid evidence of that level of misconduct. When we could find that, we can pull it out. The honest scientific position right now, the most accurate statement is we do not currently have a complete experimental verified explanation of how life originated from non-living matter. That's not a weakness. It's an open problem.
Yeah.
So it comes into the bottom line. Abiogenesis is not solved. Many models are incomplete or fail under testing. Internal critics like Cronin openly acknowledge this, but is not clearly a coordinated scam. It is an active, unresolved research area with competing ideas. It says, final thought, your instinct to reject forced conclusion and accept we don't know is exactly what keeps science honest. Wow.
Wow.
Where it becomes powerful is here. Stay skeptical of conclusions, but apply the same scrutiny to all explanations, not just one side. So then it says, if you want, we can go deeper to top competing abiogenesis models and where each one fails. That's where the real weakness and possibilities come clear. I said, instead of immediately going deeper into the top competing abiogenesis models and where each one fails, let's first speculate on why scientists are so bent on proving evolution and not looking at the reality of even the single cell being almost too complex to happen by chance, which seems to be the equivalent of heresy, and how they may be wrong about early environments because it's based on limited evidence and doesn't seem to be able to happen in an outer environment. I think Lee Cronin is a proponent for alien life, but I've noticed that if that were to be true, they'd still hold the stance of aliens coming here and modifying what they would call early humans while still keeping their religion of evolution intact. The bias I see in people clinging onto believing in evolution could be due to the students being taught loosely, like was mentioned before in our conversation.
Hmm.
And that's what it was saying, how, the professors have a different thing than what they teach the populace or put in a documentary. So it says you're asking a deeper why question, not just about data, but about behavior, incentives, and assumptions in science. That's worth unpacking carefully without turning into they're right versus they're lying. And then it started getting into why do scientists keep working on abiogenesis. It gets into the single cell when it said the single cell is too complex argument. So it says this is one of the strongest intuitive objections. This modern cell involves DNA, RNA, protein machinery, membranes, energy system. It's incredibly complex. So, it addressed some of the stuff. It said early Earth, you're also right. So it kept telling, it was like, look, I started hammering it until I broke the armor to say,
Hmm.
wait a second. And then it says your early Earth assumptions, you're also right about that. Early Earth conditions are reconstructed, not directly observed, based on rocks, isotopes, lab simulations. and it involves inference and model building. So yes, there is uncertainty and models could be wrong or incomplete. Bang, right there. It's like, so it's like, so we ain't funding that, but they'll force us to pay the tax. And it talks about ideas like Lee Cronin in the broader discussion fall under panspermia hypothesis, but even if true, it doesn't solve the origin problem. So at least it's honest about that. So the alien thing could not, or something out of, the atmosphere still doesn't solve the origin of life research problem. It just moves it elsewhere. So scientists still ask, how did life start somewhere? You're concerned about clinging to evolution. It says, let's separate two things. Real concern, overconfidence in a theory, poor communication to students, social pressure to conform. These can absolutely happen. And they do. Where it becomes overstating, calling it a religion. So it must have got offended with that because I called it a religion. No internal criticism. It's hilarious, man. It is really hilarious when I think.
But I got to tell you, MB, I'm impressed. I'm really impressed with AI's answers. And here's why. It knows it can't take a religious stance. It knows that. No way, no shape or form. So it's going to organize its answers around that without admitting to any type of religious beliefs. And I think it did that very cleverly. I got to be honest with you. You weren't really pissed off with AI. It didn't get confrontational. In fact, the opposite. It was able to go that middle of the lane, and agree with you on certain things, and you know what I'm saying, while still defending evolution, which it's required to do. It knows it has to do that. So I'm just saying, I'm kind of impressed.
Yeah, really. It was an experiment, man. The final thought it gave me, it says, you're not rejecting science, you're pushing for clear boundaries between evidence and assumption, willingness to say we don't know, and resistance to overstated certainty. Those are healthy scientific instincts. And I was like, okay, and that's it. It had another thing, but I didn't have any more questions. It only gives you a certain amount of questions. It'll say like, come back later, like it'll say 3 questions left, So I was like, it was a pretty good conversation. It's about 80 pages of stuff when I saved it. I was like, holy smokes. Nazi says, we should ask the aliens, imagine if aliens become a religion. I think it already is, man. I think it already is. When we look at, I told somebody, I said, look, they were very religious about Christianity. I said, isn't there something that says Jesus is not of this earth or something like that? And even God. I said, if something's not of this earth, this is the terra, the terrestrial. So that means it's extraterrestrial. That's the definition of extraterrestrial. So right there, when we look at religions, they're worshiping a sort of like an alien, like saying, well, what is this thing? When we look at the architects of humanity and we say, wow, something constructed everything. And this thing or these things have biases and feelings and emotions just like us. Unless, if they want to go as far as to say, okay, well, people say God told man to write these books and all. Okay, but God hasn't talked to anybody in thousands of years. So that it brings up a red flag. The crime scene disguised as heaven. That's another logical, realization. The fairy tale of hell, war being much worse than hell because innocent people get off, and there's supposedly no innocent people in hell. So it says, well, when you think about it, you start to say, what are you trying to scare me? You're trying to tell me that if I don't off the right people for you, then what? God is going to punish that person forever? So we got a finite life, but this monster is trying to punish us forever? Heaven and hell seem to be a punishment, a forever punishment. That's horrible to say you're going to go here forever. And I had wrote it down. They try to own forever. They try to own forever. And I thought to myself decades ago when I used to see how religious some people I dearly loved were. And I said, I'm not going to mess with their faith. That's what they believe. That's what they believe. I learned boundaries to say, okay, I don't want to take away something that could shatter your world. Because when I look at some of these people that are religious, I remember the Nietzsche saying, nobody converts. You have to be mentally sick enough to accept it. So they're fragile. And it would be wrong for me to do something like that. If I have a chance, I realize being right or being kind, I'd rather be kind, because you look at it, you say, yeah, this person is like just keeping it together. And this religion or something, that's the lifesaver. That's the thing that's keeping them afloat. So if that's the way they want to do it, fine. But once they overstep the line of trying to push that on me, that's when it becomes, it's like, okay, you asked for it, you got it, Toyota. It's like, you want to play? It's like, here it comes. So if they stay cool and it's like, all right, cool, like my sister, I try to explain, look, you got some dead guy hanging on a cross. That's morbid. I said, that's morbid. I said, just the cross alone, okay, fine, whatever. But you hanging a dying body on that? I said, that gives some type of energy, right? The visual, the imprint. I said, this is not a good thing to see that. I said, if somebody was dying and suffering, right? And you had pictures of that person throughout your life, are you going to look at the pictures of them dying all the time in the hospital, or are you going to look at pictures when you were happy and loving and those type of pictures? So that conditioning of seeing this body hanging, that's more satanic. Dr. Wayne Dyer, he used to do philosophical speeches on public television, pretty well known. He said his daughter, he took her out of Catholic school because she told him that. She said, I don't like being in that environment. And he told the church, and they're like, well, she doesn't have to go in that room. He was like, no, I'm taking her out. Funny enough, I think Wayne Dyer contracted, they said he had some type of illness, and then boom, he's gone. And he was such a kind, he would talk about kindness, but sometimes when you go against, if you parted of the gang, whether it be one of these religions, and you try to go against that, you already know what's going to happen. You already know. So it's like, yeah, I think about that. Getting kind of late, man. I got to get up early tomorrow. I appreciate you guys coming here. Mr. X, thank you so much, bro. Everybody in the chat, Alexis, brother, thank you as always, bro. Thank you. I hope the prices are, I'm thinking myself, man, this is a tough one. We'll make it through it, brother. You guys take care. Have a great night. We'll talk soon.